Shots cracked through the evening like someone tearing the sky open. A little girl hit the dirt, arms wrapped around a pregnant stranger she'd known for 5 minutes. When the smoke cleared, her small body had taken both bullets, while 70 Hell's Angels thundered toward them like a storm with a heartbeat. Before we start the story, tell us wherever you're watching from. Tell us in the comments, what touched you most in this story? Lydia Hart was 9, barefoot, and walking the shoulder of Pine Hollow Road with a torn backpack and a look no child should wear. Quiet calculation, like she'd already learned the world didn't hand out safety. The sun was dropping behind the Tennessee tree line, painting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. Cars passed her without slowing. Nobody saw her thumb tucked against her palm, a tiny signal for help she'd once seen on a school poster. She kept moving. Ahead, the road curved around an abandoned feed store. That was where she saw the woman, pregnant, trembling, leaning against a rusted pickup with both hands gripping her belly. Dust clung to her sweat-damp hair. She looked like she had run until her lungs turned to fire. Lydia froze. The woman spotted her and whispered a single word that carried more fear than volume. "Please!" Lydia stepped closer. The woman tried to stand upright, but her knees buckled. Lydia grabbed her arm, steadying her with strength too big for her small frame. "Someone's chasing you," Lydia said quietly. The woman nodded once, terrified. Behind them, gravel crunched. The first thing Lydia saw was the boots, heavy, steel-capped, coated in road dust. Then the man rose from behind the truck door, broad shoulders, shaved head, eyes red with a fury that had nothing to do with the heat. He wiped blood from his knuckles like it was sweat. His stare locked instantly on the pregnant woman. "There you are," he rasped. The woman stumbled backward, pulling Lydia with her. "I didn't take anything," she whispered, but her voice broke halfway through the sentence. The man smirked. "You took my child, that's enough." Lydia didn't understand the words fully, but she understood danger. She placed herself between them without thinking, her small frame squared, shoulders tight. The man blinked, surprised. Then he laughed, a short, cruel sound. "Kid, move." Lydia didn't. A handprint, purple and ugly, wrapped around the woman's wrist. Lydia recognized it immediately. She'd seen the same shape on her mother before she disappeared last winter. "Leave her alone," Lydia said, breath shaking but voice steady. The man's jaw flexed. The air thickened. He took one step toward them. That was when Lydia pulled the small cracked phone from her backpack. Lydia hesitated only once. Her thumb hovered over the contact labeled Duke, "Don't call unless you're dying." The name had sat in her phone for months, given to her by a biker who'd found her sleeping behind a laundromat in January. He'd bought her a hot meal, bandaged a cut on her hand, and told her something she hadn't believed until now. "If the world ever corners you, call me. No speeches, no details, just breathe into the phone. I'll know." Lydia pressed the button. The line clicked. Somewhere across Tennessee, a low voice answered, "Kid." She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The man in front of her reached out, grabbing the pregnant woman by the shoulder. Lydia stepped in front of her again, gripping the woman's shirt like a lifeline. Duke inhaled sharply on the other end. "Where are you?" Lydia looked at the broken feed store sign. "Highway 13, old grain lot." The man lunged. Lydia dropped the phone, shoved the woman sideways, and braced herself. Duke's voice barked through the dirt. "Hold on, we're coming." Then the world exploded in movement. The pregnant woman ran, or tried to. Lydia pushed her toward the trees behind the feed store, her small hands trembling but relentless. The man cursed and raised something shiny from his waistband. Lydia froze when she recognized the shape, an old pistol, scratched and careless, like it had lived in the wrong hands for years. He fired. The crack tore through the clearing. Birds scattered from the branches. Lydia felt the heat of the bullet graze past the woman and slam into her own upper arm. The force spun her halfway around. She stumbled but didn't fall. The woman screamed her name, though Lydia hadn't given it. The man fired again. This one hit lower, ripping through the side of Lydia's small torso. Her vision blurred. She dropped to one knee, dirt filling her fingernails as she fought not to collapse. The woman tried to shield her, but Lydia pulled her down behind a rusted trough. "You have a baby," Lydia whispered. "I don't stay low." Blood warmed the dusty ground under her. The man stepped closer. Then a sound shuddered through the air, deep, rolling, familiar. Engines, dozens. The man spun toward the road, gun raised. But even he hesitated when the rumble grew louder. One engine at first, then a wall of them, merging into something that felt like ground thunder. The kind you feel before you understand. The kind that vibrates your ribs. Duke's voice echoed from memory. If we come heavy. 70 Hell's angels rounded the bend in staggered formation, headlights slicing through dusk. Chrome caught the last slant of daylight like lightning ripping across steel. At the front rode Duke, his gray beard braided tight, his eyes fixed on the clearing with a calm that meant danger for anyone standing in his way. The riders fanned out, boots hitting gravel as engines cut off one by one. Silence fell heavy waiting. Duke dismounted and scanned the scene, the trembling pregnant woman, the bleeding child, the man with the pistol. "What did you do to her?" Duke asked, voice even, almost gentle. The man tried to lift the gun again. He didn't get far. A dozen angels stepped forward, not touching him, not threatening, just existing in a way that made him understand. His power was gone. Duke knelt beside Lydia. "What I tell you, kid? You breathe, we come." Lydia blinked against the blur in her vision as Duke's hands moved with surprising gentleness, pressing cloth torn from his own shirt against her wounds. He didn't ask questions, not yet. He just stabilized her, steady and controlled, while two angels guided the pregnant woman behind the feed store for cover. Lydia's breath came in shallow pulls, more from shock than pain. Duke cupped the side of her face lightly. "You still with me?" She nodded once. She needed help. Duke exhaled, a slow release of something he'd kept buried. "And you stepped in front of bullets. Damn, kid." The man with the pistol backed toward his truck, panic replacing arrogance. A few angels formed a semicircle, not touching him, just closing off escape. He realized too late he was surrounded. "You shoot a child," one biker murmured, disbelief more than rage. "I didn't know. She got in the way." Lydia forced herself upright. "No, I got in front of her." Duke steadied her shoulder. "You're not standing up right now." "I am," Lydia insisted, teeth gritted. "Because she's scared." It was the first moment Duke understood. This kid didn't break, she anchored. Her name was Harper Wynne, 31, breathless, shaking, one hand braced on the feed store wall as Duke's sister, Marla, a medic trained long before she patched bikers, checked her pulse. Harper's eyes kept darting toward Lydia, guilt cutting through fear. "She shouldn't have done that," Harper whispered. "I was supposed to protect her." Marla shook her head. "Kid made her own call, and you kept running. That counts." When Duke brought Harper forward, Lydia lifted her chin, trying to hide how weak her knees had become. Harper crouched beside her, tears slipping down a dusty cheek. "You saved us," she said, hand trembling as she brushed hair from Lydia's face. "You saved my baby." Lydia swallowed. "He was going to take you." Harper glanced at the man, now pinned by circumstance and 70 silent witnesses. "He was going to do worse," she admitted. "He said if I left again, he'd make sure my son was born into fear." The words hit Duke like a memory he didn't want. "Your son won't be born into fear," he said quietly. "Not while we're breathing." Lydia's eyes tracked his face. She'd never heard certainty spoken that calmly. Duke didn't believe in chaos. He believed in order that protected the vulnerable. He took Harper's statement quickly, quietly, with enough detail to hand the situation to someone with authority. Then he called Sheriff Lyle Denton, a man who once rode beside him 20 years ago before a bad crash ended his patch life. "Lyle," Duke said when the sheriff answered, "we've got a domestic situation off Highway 13. One shooter, 2 victims, one pregnant, one child. You coming?" There was a pause, heavy with history. "If you're on scene, Duke, I'm already late," Lyle replied. While they waited, Lydia leaned against Duke's side, lightheaded. He kept one arm around her without making a show of it. "You did enough," he told her. "Let the grown-ups handle the rest." But Lydia shook her head. "I want to see him arrested." "You will!" The man cursed under his breath, realizing law enforcement would arrive any minute. "She's my wife," he spat. "She's mine." Harper flinched. Duke's voice dropped to steel. "She's not a possession, not anymore." Engines approached, this time belonging to squad cars. Lydia exhaled, relief trembling through her small frame. Sheriff Denton climbed out of his cruiser, took one look at Lydia's blood-soaked shirt, and swore softly into the dust. "You holding up, sweetheart?" Lydia straightened. "I need to tell you what happened." Denton opened his notebook. Duke started to tell him she needed rest, but Lydia cut in, voice barely more than a whisper. "He shot me because I wouldn't let him take her." The sheriff crouched to her height, eyes serious but gentle. "You remember the shots clearly?" Lydia nodded. "Both." Harper's voice cracked behind her. She stepped in front of me twice." The sheriff's jaw tightened. He walked over to the man, hands cuffed, ego crumbling, and read him his rights while two deputies collected the pistol from the dirt. Lydia watched everything, her breathing uneven. Duke rested a hand on her back. "You don't need to prove anything, kid. You did more than most grown men would." I wasn't scared," she lied. He could hear the tremble beneath it. "Being scared doesn't make you weak. Running toward danger to help someone, that makes you something else." She looked up. "What?" "One of us," Duke said. After the sheriff drove the man away, the clearing settled into an exhausted quiet. Harper was escorted to an ambulance for a precautionary check. Lydia refused to leave her side until the medics insisted she needed attention too. Duke picked her up, carefully, like she might break, and placed her on the tailgate of a bike trailer. Marla cleaned her wounds, stitching with hands steady from decades in emergency rooms and biker bars. "You're lucky," Marla murmured. "Both bullets." For the first time that day, Lydia felt something unfamiliar settle warm inside her. Belonging. Duke didn't ask Lydia if she wanted to ride with them. He simply handed her a worn leather vest lined with soft quilted fabric so it wouldn't rub her stitches. "Put this on," he said. "It'll hurt less." She slipped it over her shoulders, feeling its weight, protective, not heavy. Duke lifted her onto his bike with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with his rugged hand. Harper rode in the ambulance ahead, escorted by 2 patrol cars and 10 angels who blocked traffic with quiet precision. When Duke's engine started, Lydia felt the vibration through her ribs, steady and grounding. "Hold on," he said. She wrapped her arms around him, small and tentative. The convoy moved as one, a shield of chrome and leather following Harper to the hospital. Town lights passed in a blur. People stepped out of diners and gas stations, watching the procession, whispering. They stared at Lydia on Duke's bike, but not with judgment, more with recognition that something extraordinary had happened. Lydia rested her cheek against Duke's back. For the first time in months, she felt safe enough to close her eyes. Inside the hospital, fluorescent lights hummed overhead, contrasting sharply with the rumble they'd just left behind. Lydia sat on a gurney while Marla finished wrapping her wounds. Harper was taken down the hall for fetal monitoring, her eyes lingering on Lydia every time her door passed open. "You're stable," Marla said, adjusting the bandage at Lydia's ribs. "But you're not going anywhere tonight." Lydia nodded. "Can I see her?" "In a minute." Duke stood by the window, arms folded, watching the parking lot where dozens of angels waited outside, refusing to leave until they knew both victims were safe. The nurses whispered about it, 70 bikers out front, not causing trouble, just waiting under streetlights like a protective wall. Lydia cleared her throat. "Duke," he turned. "Yeah, kid, why'd you tell me to breathe into the phone, not talk?" Duke scratched his beard. "Sometimes kids can't speak when they're scared, but breathing, that's something you can't fake. I know the sound of someone who needs help." Lydia thought about her mother, and the silence that followed the night she vanished. "No one breathed for me back then," she whispered. Duke didn't look away. "You're not alone anymore." Harper insisted Lydia be brought into her room. Once the doctor confirmed her baby's heartbeat was strong. Lydia walked slowly, hand pressed to her bandages, feeling every step. Harper sat propped up, one hand resting protectively over her belly, her eyes softening when she saw the girl. "You saved us," Harper said again, voice raw. Lydia shrugged awkwardly. "You were hurt." "I was trapped," Harper admitted. "For years. People think it's simple to leave, but when someone controls your breathing, your sleep, your money, your whole world shrinks. You stop believing escape is real." Lydia bit her lip. "My mom, she tried to leave someone too, but she never came back." Harper reached for her hand. "You were braver today than most adults I've ever met." The door opened. Duke stepped in, slow and respectful, as if entering a sacred space. "We need to talk next steps," he said quietly. Harper nodded, eyes flicking between him and Lydia. "We're not going back to that house." "But you won't," Duke confirmed. "But Harper, your husband's brothers might come looking." Lydia stiffened. Harper swallowed. "Then we're staying close to you." Duke's jaw tightened, not in reluctance, responsibility settling deeper. Duke pulled a chair beside Harper's bed, the old leather creaking under his weight. His voice dropped low. "Harper, your husband's record is worse than the sheriff let on. He wasn't acting alone today." Harper exhaled slowly. "I know. His cousins, they run a small crew out by the quarry. They helped him keep me isolated." Marla, standing beside the monitor, frowned. They dangerous enough that he thought they'd chase me if I got away, Harper said. Lydia's stomach tightened. They'll come here. No, Duke answered firmly. Sheriff's already posted units outside, but once Harper's discharged, we need a safe place. Harper looked at Lydia. She shouldn't be part of this. Lydia shook her head. I'm not leaving you. Duke watched the exchange, something shifting quietly behind his eyes. He rubbed his palms together, thinking. We've got a cabin out by the ridge. Used to be my brother S before he passed. Remote enough. Safe enough. Harper hesitated. I don't want to cause trouble for your club. You're not, Duke said. You're under our protection now, both of you. Lydia leaned back slightly, hearing a tone she hadn't heard since childhood, someone speaking like family. It was near midnight when they made the move. Harper rode in a deputy's SUV, Lydia in the backseat beside her, both wrapped in thick blankets the hospital provided. Duke led the convoy again, 15 angels this time, the rest splitting off to keep eyes on town routes. The road to Ridge Road was narrow, cutting between dark fields and silent pine stands. Lydia watched Duke's taillight blinking steadily in the darkness. The cabin appeared at the end of a gravel stretch, small, weathered but sturdy. A front porch sagged slightly under the weight of time. Duke unlocked the door like someone who hadn't touched the place in years but still knew every hinge. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and dust. You'll stay here until we sort things out, Duke said gently. No one knows this place. No one comes up this road without us seeing them. Harper eased onto the couch, hand on her belly. Lydia sat beside her, leaning carefully against her uninjured side. Outside, the angels spread out like sentinels, engines off, silhouettes lit only by moonlight. Lydia listened to the quiet, a different kind of silence, one that didn't threaten. A silence she could finally trust. The cabin settled into a tired stillness, the kind that came only after fear had finally loosened its grip. Harper slept lightly on the couch, one hand curled around Lydia's, the other guarding her belly. Lydia tried to rest, but every creak of the wooden walls made her eyes open. Duke noticed. He came inside, boots soft on the old floorboards, and handed her a chipped mug of warm tea. You're safe here, he said. Lydia wrapped both hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into her fingers. People say that a lot, she murmured. Duke sat on the edge of the coffee table. When I say it, I mean it. Outside, angels rotated watch positions. Headlights occasionally swept the tree line, signaling a shift change. They weren't loud. They didn't swagger. They stood beneath the moon like men who had seen too much hurt and refused to let more happen on their watch. Lydia's eyes drifted toward the window. Why do you care about us? She asked softly. Duke's answer took him a moment. Because someone once cared about me when I didn't think I deserved it. Lydia held the mug tighter. She understood. Just before dawn, gravel shifted somewhere beyond the tree line. Lydia sat up instantly. Harper stirred, groggy and protective. Duke was already at the door, hand raised to quiet them. Outside, 3 angels stepped toward the sound, flashlights cutting across branches. Then a figure stumbled into the clearing, a young man not armed, hands raised high. It's Mark, one of the angels whispered. The cousin, the youngest. Duke moved forward. If you're here to stir trouble, turn around now. Mark shook his head quickly. No, I'm not with them anymore. Victor's brothers are. They're planning something stupid. They said they'd finish what he started. I don't want any part of it. I came to warn her. Harper's breath hitched. Duke studied the boy, judging truth the way men like him did, by the way someone's eyes shifted when lying, by the tightness in their jaw. Mark's fear was genuine. You did right coming here, Duke said finally, but you're not going near the cabin. Mark nodded, relieved. Just make sure she stays hidden. They're angry. They think the club humiliated them. Duke's hand settled on his holster, not to draw but to steady. No, he said quietly. We protected a woman and a child. That's not humiliation. That's humanity. Once Mark was escorted away to give a statement to the sheriff, the cabin buzzed with quiet, controlled activity. Angels moved with purpose, checking sightlines, repositioning bikes, placing Duke's truck across the entrance to the gravel drive. Harper watched from the porch, wrapped in a blanket, exhaustion etched into her features. Lydia joined her. Are they coming? Harper sighed. I hope not. Duke approached with a thermos and 2 cups. Lyle, S. sending extra deputies. They won't get far if they try anything. Harper rubbed her forehead. I don't want violence. I just want peace. You'll get peace, Duke said. but sometimes peace takes standing your ground. Lydia leaned into Harper's side. He won't let anything happen to us. Harper looked at the girl, wounded, stubborn, unbreakable, and brushed hair from her face. You should be at home, not here in danger. Lydia swallowed. I didn't have a home, not until now. Duke's eyes softened, but he didn't comment. Instead, he scanned the woods again, his posture vigilant. Daylight brings people bold enough to act stupid, he muttered. But we're not moving, not running, not hiding. Lydia watched him and felt something she hadn't felt in years, trust. By late morning, the dusty road leading to the cabin filled with movement, 2 sheriff cruisers, then another, then a tow truck for good measure. Lyle Denton stepped out first, hat tilted low. "Morning, Duke," he said. "We got word Victor's brothers headed this way." "They were," Duke replied. "Not anymore." Lyle raised an eyebrow. "You're doing." Not a hand lifted. Duke said, "We talked to someone who knows them. They're backing off, for now." Lyle exhaled, half relieved, half wary. "I'll keep deputies around the area just in case, but Harper's husband is looking at serious charges. The DA's office doesn't play around with child endangerment and unlawful discharge." Harper stepped outside, Lydia's hand in hers. Lyle tipped his hat to them both. "You're safe now." Lydia looked up. "Really safe?" Lyle nodded. "Yeah, really?" The angels didn't cheer or relax. They simply stood a little straighter, as if absorbing the sheriff's words. Duke touched the brim of his bandana in acknowledgement. Harper squeezed Lydia's hand. "It's over," she whispered. Lydia wasn't sure she believed in over, but she believed in Duke, in Harper, in the 70 silhouettes still standing silently outside, and that felt like enough. That afternoon, when the dust settled and the deputies left, Duke walked Lydia to the back porch overlooking the ridge. The air smelled like pine and warm dirt. Lydia sat on the steps, legs dangling, face pale but calmer than the night before. "You're brave," Duke said, "too brave for 9. Lydia hugged her knees. "I just didn't want her baby to grow up scared. That's more bravery than most see in a lifetime." She looked up at him. "What happens to me now?" Duke scratched his beard. "Harper wants you with her. We can help make that happen. She'll need support. And you," his voice softened, "you deserve a home that doesn't hurt." Lydia blinked slowly. "Would you still check on us?" Duke smiled, not wide but real. "Kid, you took bullets for someone you barely knew. You think we're walking away from you now?" She breathed out, shaky, relieved. Harper stepped onto the porch, hand on her belly. "We want you with us if you want that too." Lydia's answer was immediate. A small, fierce nod, and for the first time since losing her mother, she stepped toward a life that might finally love her back. Some families are born. Others are found on dusty roads, in moments when courage wins over fear. If this story touched you, stay with us. Subscribe